Mila has always made everything seem easy, even when it was not. For 46 years, she has effortlessly brushed away the clouds and always found a way for us and all the children to walk in the sunshine of life.
Nice to hear that voice again. That was back in 2019, former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney thanking his wife at the opening ceremony for the Brian Mulroney Institute of Government at St. University. 5 years later, Mila Mulroney is finding new ways to honor her husband's legacy and a school that meant so much to him. Last week, she was named Chancellor of the university. In her first interview since the former Prime Minister's death, I spoke to Mila Mulroney about this new role and, of course, the outpouring of support that she and her family received from Canadians. Mrs. Mulroney, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
I want to start with this new role and why you decided to take on the role as Chancellor of St. University.
Well, you know, St. has been a labor of love for our family. And as I think I mentioned to you, we've been married for 51 years, and I've spent a great deal of time on the campus watching it grow and change and develop and adjust to to Canada and its changing landscape. And it's been really a labor of love for all of us. And so when they asked me, I was really honored by the request, gave it a little thought, and decided that it's a sense of continuity that I think my husband would have appreciated, and it keeps me in touch with him, keeps me closer to him.
Yeah. Remind Canadians why St. FX was so important to your husband, why it was so formative to him.
Well, it was formative because initially it was a small university in the Maritimes that was a university home for fishermen, sons, and electricians' sons, and farmers' sons. And it's a school that has grown with the changing, as I said, changing landscape. And for Brian, this is where he formed his political views, met a lot of people that determined his future. And he loved his professors. He loved me. One of his best friends, Sam Wakeham, was from there. St. FX had a lot of political influence in Ottawa, especially during the last sort of 30 years. You had Alan McEachern there. Mm-hmm. You had Frank McKenna as the Premier of New Brunswick. You had Lowell Murray. You had so many people, and of course you had Brian. So it was it was a university that allowed people to become who they were best at being.
Yeah. How do you think he would feel about you taking on this role and as you say, bringing continuity to his legacy and to your family's legacy, for that matter?
Rosie, I think he was instrumental in this role. I think he's watching from on high. And Brian was a little bit of a control freak. I don't know if you know that about him, but I think this is very much, this sounds very much like something he would have orchestrated.
What do you hope to bring to it? Because you have causes and interests and things that you have in your own right, things that you have dedicated yourself to. So what are you hoping to bring to the role, Mrs. Mulroney? Well, you know, I was very involved in Literacy Canada. I was involved in volunteerism. I'm an immigrant, so I know what it's like to grow up with a bit of diversity or a lot of diversity. And I'm a woman who really believes in giving back. And Canada's an incredible country, and the Maritimes, as you probably know, Brian's first seat was in Central Nova, and people just are so kind. And I think that's part of who Brian was. He was a kind man, and I think what I hope to bring is, I hope I'll bring a sense of continuity.
We obviously haven't spoken, and you haven't spoken really publicly since the funeral. So obviously my condolences to you and to the family. It was a beautiful funeral, as I'm sure many people have told you. And when I spoke to your son Mark and others, one of the things that was so comforting to all of you was hearing the stories about Mr. Mulroney. Tell me what that was like to hear all those stories, even though you probably knew some of them and you knew about his impact, but to hear those stories from so many different people.
Well, I think one of the reasons that we decided to meet all the people that came to say goodbye and farewell to Brian was the fact that we heard stories that we had not heard before. Mm-hmm. And the children and I, it kept us going, along with the adrenaline. But I have to say there was such an outpouring of thoughtfulness and people putting themselves out to come and say hello to us and say goodbye to Brian, that those stories, and a lot of them wrote them down in the books when they were signing. And I have to tell you, I'm going to keep every single one of them. And if I could figure a way to get those books published or those notes published, I think it's inspirational.
Did it surprise you, the outpouring? Because obviously there were people who didn't love your husband as much as others. Did it surprise you how generous people were?
It pleased me. I won't say it surprised me because, you know, Brian had been retired for a long time and we saw it on the streets when he walked. We saw it, you know, Brian was famous for taking his afternoon walks all by himself, and people would jump out of their houses to say hello to him, and cars would stop. So I was very pleased to see the outpouring. But I knew of the many kind things he did, the people he took care of, and that he never asked for anything back.
One of the things Mark told me, because he did give me an interview on the day that you were here in Ottawa for the Line and State, he talked about how you were all standing there for so many hours, as you said, and how resilient and how strong you are. I wonder how you're doing since then, Mrs. Mulroney.
Well, you know, I'm cocooned by a wonderful family and wonderful grandchildren and extraordinary friends. So if I keep busy, I'm doing very well. So that's all I'll say, because, you know, I think there are so many people grieving, and I'm not alone in my sadness, but I think I'm very fortunate. I mean, 16 grandchildren. There's a birthday, there's a celebration, there's always something going on, you know. There's Halloween coming up, there's Thanksgiving, so I keep it incredibly busy. And I'm fortunate because Montreal and Toronto are very close.
Yes. I'll ask you this. One of the things, of course, Mr. Mulroney was so well known for was being on the phone and offering advice if needed and giving advice if wanted. Are people calling you for advice? Because you were the other part of his political success. Are you getting those calls now?
Well, I'll tell you something. I was never a phone person, and I now have my cell phone, as the wonderful people helping you here today. I have it strapped to my thigh because I'm trying to be more connected and more involved, and I'm so proud of my husband's legacy, and I'm proud of being part of this enormous family, and I think I'm going to try very hard to be a phone person.
Mrs. Mulroney, I wish you well in this new role. I think you're probably right that your husband had something to do with it, but please come back and good luck with it. I know you'll do him proud.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. I appreciate you taking the time.